Less than a week ago, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson suggested the United States had opened back-channel communications with North Korea. The president responded on Twitter, telling Tillerson not to waste his time. RT correspondent Joseph Ricci reports that confusion within the administration may be a way to mask the real target of U.S. policy towards North Korea.
The United States has almost 800 military bases spread across 70 countries. But one region in particular has the eye of military planners in Washington. No, not the Middle East, where the U.S. military footprint is everywhere. I'm talking about the Pacific. At the end of the Cold War, neocons in the Pentagon drew up a new global strategy, the pivot to the Pacific. The pivot has also been called the plan to contain China.
The fact of the matter is that through the 90s, there was this fevered debate almost in policy circles in Washington, D.C., that the next great competitor was China. And during the Clinton administration, there was a very tense argument whether China was a strategic competitor or China was a strategic partner. Most felt that it was some form of strategic competitor. In any case, at that point of time, it was a Democratic administration in office, and many of the Republican senior policy types who were later to become known as the neoconservatives actually wanted to train their focus, now that the Soviet Union had collapsed, onto China.
On campaign, President Trump railed against China. Since inauguration, his attention has turned to Kim Jong-un.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary.
But Trump's change in tone doesn't mean the pressure is off of China. China is North Korea's main trading partner, and the two countries have a historic relationship. During the Korean War, for example, when the U.S. nearly occupied the North, China responded, pushing the U.S. military to the brink of defeat. For the Chinese, the entire row over North Korea has to do with putting them in a corner. More U.S. Navy ships to the Pacific threatens China's bid for control over the South China Sea. Meanwhile, the Chinese have openly protested the placing of the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea.
The Korean Peninsula is kind of a beachhead for American physical presence on the land territory of Asia. And from that perspective, it's kind of the spear, the leading edge of American presence in Asia. And if the pivot was about rededicating America to an Asia-Pacific deterrent strategy, the Korean Peninsula would be one of the theaters in which the pivot would also play out.
Now, with Russia's growing economic and diplomatic influence in the region, the pivot to the Pacific has another target. Politicians and pundits fear a nuclear-armed North Korea. They should also be concerned with how China or Russia might react to a strike on the North. First, however, the U.S. should work out the details of the so-called pivot.
There was no real planning in any depth or detail how the pivot should be rolled out, how it should be communicated, and what its outlines, frameworks, parameters, and its details should be. And that is the point at which I think hell broke loose.
Joseph Ricci, reporting for RT in Washington, D.C.